I was savoring my morning tea at the beach house when the security alarm shattered the pre-dawn silence at 5 a.m. Frank, the security guard, sounded panicked on the intercom. "Mrs. Linda, your daughter-in-law is at the gate with a moving company. She's claiming the house belongs to her now." I took a slow, deliberate sip of my chamomile tea and allowed myself a knowing smile. "Let her in, Frank. Open the gates wide. Let them all enter. She's about to receive the surprise of her lifetime." I know exactly what you're thinking right now. How could a 68-year-old woman remain so composed while someone brazenly attempts to steal her property? Allow me to explain something crucial. Composure isn't weakness. Composure becomes your most formidable weapon when you already know precisely how this story ends. But before I reveal how I orchestrated this moment, you need to understand the complete picture. This isn't a tale of victimhood. This is a story about patience, strategic planning, and ultimate justice. If you want to discover how one grandmother delivered the lesson of a lifetime to someone who tried to take everything, subscribe to Elderly Stories, because narratives like this deserve to be heard. My name is Linda Ballard. I'm 68 years old. I devoted 40 years to relentless work. I've been a widow for 8 years. I built my estate with these hands that may tremble slightly when holding a teacup now, but never once trembled when I needed to provide for my family. That Friday morning, as the coastal sky began transforming from black to orange, I sat on the terrace of my oceanfront home, a property I purchased with my retirement settlement after concluding my career as a senior accountant for a major textile corporation. 40 years of meticulously tracking every penny for other people taught me the precise value of both money and effort. The salt-laden breeze tousled my silver hair as I cradled my chamomile tea. I maintain a sacred ritual. Every morning before sunrise, I descend to the terrace wrapped in my terracotta-colored wool blanket, the one my mother knitted with her own hands before she passed, and I watch the ocean awaken. It's my moment of tranquility, my time to remember why I continue forward. Then I heard the gate intercom buzzing, insistent, aggressive. This was no friendly visit. Frank, my night security guard, a man in his 50s with a perpetually anxious expression, came running around the corner of the house. His flashlight beam bounced erratically off his security vest. "Mrs. Linda, I'm terribly sorry to disturb you." His voice cracked with distress. "There's a professional moving truck at the gate, and your daughter-in-law, Mrs. Sarah, she's insisting she's here to collect her belongings. She claims the house is legally hers now." I didn't rise immediately. I took another measured sip of my tea, feeling the warmth descend my throat. I watched the waves crash rhythmically against the rocks below. How many people did she bring with her? I asked with a calmness that surprised even myself. 3 movers, ma'am, and a large commercial truck. It's a professional operation. I smiled, not a happy smile, but a smile of recognition. The moment I had been preparing for had finally arrived. "Frank, open the gate for them." "Ma'am." "Let them pass. Let her enter. Allow her to do whatever she wishes." Frank stared at me as though I'd lost my sanity. Perhaps to anyone else, I appeared that way. Perhaps anyone would assume an elderly woman living alone had simply surrendered when faced with being robbed. But I knew something Sarah didn't know. Something nobody knew yet. Sarah, my daughter-in-law, the woman who married my only son David 5 years ago. A 36-year-old woman, beautiful as a fashion magazine cover, cunning as a serpent, ambitious as a scavenger. When David first introduced her to me, I desperately wanted to believe in her. I wanted to believe that my son, after 2 failed relationships, had finally found someone who genuinely loved him. David was 43 years old. He worked as a civil engineer for a construction company, earning a respectable income, but he never possessed a mind for business strategy. He was always fundamentally good, perhaps too good. Sarah entered our lives like a perfumed whirlwind, beautiful, articulate, with that manner of speaking that makes everything sound profoundly important. She claimed to work in digital marketing, though I never actually witnessed her working. Initially, she would embrace me warmly, call me Mama Linda, bring homemade desserts when she visited. But I'm not foolish. I never have been. I noticed how her eyes systematically scanned my home during every visit, how she inquired with slightly too much interest about my retirement savings, my properties, my future plans. How she whispered conspiratorially with David when they thought I wasn't paying attention. Now, as I heard the truck's engine rumbling onto my property, as I heard the hurried footsteps of the movers, as I heard Sarah's authoritative voice issuing commands, I remembered the exact moment I knew this woman hadn't married into my family for love. It was 2 years ago, during Christmas dinner. David casually suggested that I should simplify my inheritance early to avoid excessive taxes. Sarah nodded beside him with that smile that no longer appeared warm to me, only calculating. That evening, after they departed, I wept. Not about the money. I cried because my son now viewed me as an obstacle standing between him and his future. But the tears eventually dried, and something harder, sharper, grew in their place. I finished my tea, stood up slowly, adjusted my ivory-colored cotton robe and slippers, secured my gray hair in a simple ponytail, and walked inside the house. Sarah was about to learn the most expensive lesson of her entire life, and I was thoroughly prepared to teach it. But what Sarah remained completely oblivious to was that I had been meticulously preparing for this moment for months. What she was about to discover would change everything. From the second-floor window, I observed Sarah directing the movers as though she commanded a small empire. She wore tight designer jeans, a crisp white silk blouse, and dark sunglasses despite the sun barely rising above the horizon. Her perfectly straightened brown hair cascaded over her shoulders, always impeccable, always in control. Or so she believed. "Take that entire patio furniture set," she commanded, pointing toward my terrace. "Those garden chairs are genuine teak. They cost a fortune. The gray sectional sofa in the main living room, the marble coffee table, everything of significant value goes into the truck." The movers exchanged uncomfortable glances. One of them, a young man wearing a baseball cap, asked hesitantly, "Do you have documentation proving this property belongs to you, ma'am?" Sarah extracted a folder from her authentic Louis Vuitton handbag, genuine, naturally, purchased with David's money. She brandished several papers confidently. "It's all documented here. A deed of gift signed by the previous owner. Everything is completely legal." A lie. A lie so monumental it nearly made me laugh from my window vantage point. You see, I need to explain how this entire situation originated. How I ended up with a daughter-in-law capable of attempting to rob me while I still drew breath. I met Sarah 5 years ago at David's birthday celebration. He had her on his arm, beaming with a smile I hadn't witnessed since he was a young boy. She wore a striking red dress that accentuated her figure, expensive high heels, flawless makeup. When she greeted me, she clasped my hands in hers warmly. "Mrs. Linda, David has shared so much about you. It's truly an honor to meet the remarkable woman who raised such a wonderful man." The perfect words, the ideal tone, the calculated smile. But I've accumulated 68 years of life experience. You learn to perceive what lies behind the smile. Her eyes were studying me, not with genuine affection, but with appraisal, like someone entering a luxury boutique and calculating whether they can afford what's displayed in the window. The initial months were pure theatrical performance. Sarah visited my city house every Sunday. She assisted in the kitchen, inquired about my health, brought fresh flowers. David was completely enchanted. I desperately wanted to be wrong. I wanted my instincts to be deceiving me. But then the subtle transformations began. The weekly visits became bi-weekly, then monthly. David started canceling our scheduled meals because Sarah had made alternative plans. When I called, he sounded rushed, distracted, perpetually in a hurry. One afternoon, I confronted him directly. It occurred in my kitchen, 6 months after their wedding. David had arrived alone, which had become rare. "Son, I feel like I'm losing you," I said gently, pouring him coffee. He avoided my gaze. Mom, it's not like that. It's just… Sarah thinks you're being too invasive. She says we need space to build our marriage properly. Invasive. The word sliced through me like a blade. Invasive for wanting to see my own son. Don't take it personally. She comes from a different type of family, more independent. More independent, as if loving your family constituted a weakness. I swallowed my pain. I smiled. I told him I understood. But that night, alone in my house, I cried until no tears remained. My husband Michael had died 8 years earlier from a sudden heart attack. David was all I had left, and someone was systematically taking him from me, piece by piece. The months passed. The distance expanded. David stopped sharing details about his life. I no longer knew if he faced problems at work, if he was happy, if he slept peacefully. Sarah had constructed a wall between us, brick by brick, with soft words and poisonous implications. Then the suggestions about money commenced. It happened at a family dinner 2.5 years ago. David and Sarah invited me to an expensive restaurant in the upscale district. I thought they wanted reconciliation. I arrived with hope flourishing in my heart. Sarah ordered expensive wine. David appeared nervous. Midway through the meal, she dropped the question with a sweet smile. Mama Linda, David mentioned you own 3 properties. What an incredible blessing, right? It must be complicated managing all that at your age. At my age, as if the 66 years I had accumulated then rendered me incapable. I manage them perfectly fine, thank you, I responded curtly. Of course, of course. I was merely suggesting. Well, David is your only heir, and with inheritance taxes being so substantial, it would be more prudent to execute a deed of gift while you're living. That way, you avoid the government confiscating half. David simply stared at his plate. He didn't defend me. He didn't say, this isn't the appropriate time, or that's my mother's decision. Just complicit silence. My properties are held in a living trust, I replied. I am the sole beneficiary throughout my lifetime. After that, everything transfers to David automatically. Everything is properly arranged. Sarah's lips compressed into a thin line. Her smile failed to reach her eyes. How organized. Although, don't you trust your own son? That question, that damned question, haunted me for months afterward. Because that was the genuine poison, making me feel guilty for protecting what I had built over 40 years of dedicated work. Making me feel as though not trusting him sufficiently to surrender everything immediately somehow meant I didn't love my son. From my window, I watched Sarah now pointing toward my art collection in the living room, paintings I had purchased during my travels, each with its own story, its own memory. Those 2. Everything that appears valuable. One of the movers asked again, are you absolutely certain the owner authorized this? Because if not, should I contact the police to inform them you're obstructing a legal relocation? Sarah's voice turned razor-sharp. Just perform your job, and I'll pay you double. Money. Always the money. That was Sarah, beautiful on the exterior, hollow on the interior. And my son, my good, noble David, had fallen in love with the wrapping without examining the gift inside, which was rotten. I inhaled deeply. I allowed her to act. I permitted her to gain confidence, because every passing minute, every piece of furniture she ordered loaded, every word she uttered in front of witnesses constituted another piece of evidence. And I had learned something invaluable during 40 years of accounting. Numbers don't lie. Documents don't lie. Truth always emerges when you know where to look. Sarah shouted toward the house interior. Check the study. There must be a safe. I'm certain she keeps the property deeds and her jewelry in there. I smiled because she had absolutely no idea what I actually kept in that study. And she was about to discover it. But there was something Sarah completely ignored, something that would transform her triumphant smile into an expression of absolute panic. I descended the stairs slowly, without rushing. Each step was a conscious decision. Each step brought me closer to the moment I had been anticipating for months. From the foyer, I could see Sarah's back. She was still issuing orders, oblivious to my presence. The movers were transporting boxes, wrapping lamps, disconnecting the large-screen television David had given me last year for my birthday. Ironic, isn't it? He gave me that gift, and now his wife was here to steal it. But let me explain what was genuinely at stake here. This wasn't merely about a beach house or some furniture. This was about my entire life's work. I own 3 properties, 3, each one purchased with my own effort, without assistance from anyone. First, my family home in the city. A 2-story house with a garden, 4 bedrooms where I raised David, where I buried my husband Michael. Valued at approximately $250,000 according to the most recent appraisal. My memories reside there. The photographs on the walls, the lemon tree we planted when David turned 5. Second, a condominium in an upscale neighborhood that I purchased 15 years ago as an investment. I rent it to a foreign couple. It's worth $400,000. That $2,500 in monthly rental income helps me live with dignity, to never ask anyone for anything, to maintain my independence. Third, this house right here on the coast, my refuge, my sanctuary of peace, valued at $500,000. I purchased it with my retirement payout when I concluded my career. 40 years of work calculating other people's budgets, auditing multimillion-dollar accounts while I lived on just enough. And when it finally became my turn, when I received my $150,000 settlement plus my savings, I decided to give myself this gift. A place to awaken and see the ocean. A place where nobody could dictate what I should do. A place that was mine. Total value, over $1.1 million. Plus my savings in the bank, plus my investments in mutual funds, almost $1.3 million in total. For many people, perhaps that's not a fortune. But for a woman who started as an accounting assistant, who became widowed and had to raise a son alone, who never spent on luxuries but on education and the future, it was my dignity converted into numbers. And Sarah wanted all of it. Not part of it. All of it. After Michael died, when David was 25 and already working, my attorney recommended I create a trust, something to protect my assets while securing my son's future. Mrs. Linda, my attorney Mr. Edgewood told me, a serious man of 60 who had been Michael's college friend, place everything in a living trust. You will be the sole beneficiary throughout your lifetime. Nobody can touch anything. When you pass, everything transfers automatically to David. Clean, legal, without excessive taxes. And that's exactly what I did. I signed the documents. Everything was protected. I could use, sell, rent, or do whatever I desired with my properties. But nobody else could claim them. Not even David. When I explained this arrangement to my son, he understood. Or so I thought. Mom, that's perfect. I don't want you worrying about these matters. I just want you to live peacefully. Those were his words 8 years ago when he was still my David, before Sarah. Everything changed 6 months ago. It was a Sunday. David and Sarah appeared unannounced at my city house. I was in the garden pruning my roses. Sarah was carrying a folder and wearing an expression that no longer attempted to appear kind. Mom, we need to talk, David said without even greeting me with a kiss hello. We sat in the living room. Sarah opened the folder and extracted some printed documents. Look, Mama Linda, David and I have been conducting research. If you gift the properties now while you're living, the taxes are substantially lower. And besides... She paused, calculating. At your age, wouldn't it be better to simplify things? Not have to worry about managing all this. At my age. That phrase again. I don't need to simplify anything. I am perfectly capable. Of course you are, David interjected, but his voice sounded rehearsed. Nobody is suggesting you're not. It's just, well, Sarah and I want to purchase a larger house. We're thinking about having children soon, and if we could sell the downtown condo or obtain a loan against these properties. There it was, the naked truth. They wanted my life's work as collateral for their plans, for their life, as if my 40 years of work were simply a resource available for their whims. The answer is no. Sarah's mask fell off completely. You don't trust your own son? What kind of mother does that? One who worked every single day of her life to have something of her own. One who isn't going to gift away her security simply because someone asks her to. David stood up, furious. I had never seen him like that. You are incredibly selfish, Mom. Everything I have, I owe to you. But now that I need your support, you turn your back on me. Those words shattered me. My son, my only son, calling me selfish for not surrendering everything I had built. Sarah placed her hand on David's shoulder. Leave her, honey. I see what she's like. She'd rather cling to her possessions than help her own family. They left, slamming the door. I remained in that living room, trembling with pain in my chest that wasn't physical, but hurt more than any illness. That night, I cried until dawn, not about the money, but because I had lost my son. Because Sarah had succeeded. She had turned him against me. But when the sun rose, something inside me transformed. I stopped crying. I rose. I looked at myself in the mirror. I saw a 68-year-old woman with dark circles and wrinkles, yes. But I also saw something else. I saw strength. I saw intelligence. I saw 40 years of experience dealing with numbers, with audits, with people who attempted to steal or deceive. And I knew I was not going to be a victim. That same day, I called Mr. Edgewood. I need your help. Someone is going to try to take what's mine, and I need to be prepared. Now, standing in the foyer of my beach house, watching Sarah direct the looting of my belongings, I remembered every step I had taken since that day, every document I had hidden, every recording I had saved, every piece of evidence I had gathered. Sarah finally turned around, saw me standing there in my robe and slippers, and smiled, a smile of victory. Linda! What a surprise to see you here. I didn't say anything. Not yet. I simply watched her. And in that silence, she made her first mistake of the morning. She thought my silence was surrender. But what she didn't know was that every second that passed, every word she said, was digging her own grave. Sarah walked toward me with that confidence only people who believe they've already won possess. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor. She stopped approximately 3 feet away from me, crossed her arms, and tilted her head with an expression of fake concern. Linda, did you sleep well? You look confused. Confused? What a convenient word. I am perfectly clear, Sarah. I see you brought assistance. She released a soft, almost maternal laugh. Oh, of course. I know this must be difficult for you to process. That's why I came early, to avoid making it too stressful for you. Remember those papers you signed last month? The deed of gift? This house is in my name now, legally. She offered me coffee in my own house, as if she were the host and I was the guest. That same afternoon, I went to Dr. Evans. He ran every test, mini mental state exam, memory tests, a full cognitive evaluation. A week later, I had the results in my hands, 68-year-old patient with cognitive function completely normal for her age. No signs of impairment. Oriented to time, space, and person. Excellent working memory. Judgment intact. I guarded those documents like gold. They were my shield against Sarah's lies. But I needed more. I needed to know who this woman who had infiltrated my family really was. Mark Sullivan, the private investigator, came to my house on a Thursday afternoon. He's about 55, an ex-police detective. A friend had given me his contact years ago when he helped her sister with an infidelity case. "Mrs. Linda, what do you need to know?" he asked, taking out a small notepad. "Everything. I want to know who Sarah Adgery is before she met my son, her past relationships, her debts, her history. Everything you can find." Mark nodded. "This takes time, Mrs. Linda. And money. I don't care what it costs. I need the truth." I paid him a $2,000 retainer. Mark began his work. In the meantime, I did my own quiet investigation. Every time David and Sarah visited, I recorded the conversations on my phone. I'd leave it on the table, seemingly forgotten, but recording every word. I recorded every call where they pressured me about the properties, every condescending comment about my age, every insinuation that I was losing it. I also installed discreet security cameras in my city house, tiny, almost invisible, in the living room, the dining room, the entryway. Edgewood recommended it. If they try to force you to sign something, if they yell at you, if there's any kind of coercion, you need proof, he told me. 3 weeks passed. Then Mark called me. "Mrs. Linda, I need to see you. I found some important things." We met at a quiet coffee shop downtown. Mark put a thick folder on the table. My heart was racing. "Sarah Adgery," he began. 36 years old, originally from Ohio. And here's where it gets interesting. He opened the folder. Inside were photos, printed documents, reports. Sarah was married before, from 2015 to 2018, to a businessman from Chicago named Oscar Miller. He was 52 when they got married. She was 26. He showed me wedding photos. Sarah looked radiant, exactly the same as when she married David. Same calculating smile. The marriage ended in a nasty divorce. Oscar accused her of manipulating him into putting properties in her name, of emptying their joint bank accounts. There's a fraud lawsuit that never went far because they reached a private settlement. He paid her $100,000 just to leave him alone. I felt like I couldn't breathe. $100,000? Yep. And there's more. Before Oscar, she was in a relationship with a widower from Pennsylvania. It lasted 6 months. He was also older, also had property. The relationship ended abruptly when the man's children confronted her with proof she was selling family heirlooms without permission. Mark pulled out more papers. Sarah has debts, a lot of them. Credit cards, $50,000 in total across 4 different cards, all maxed out. She also owes money to private lenders, at least another $10,000. Over $60,000 in debt, and she's living like a millionaire. Does David know about this? Mark shook his head. I doubt it. I also looked into your son, ma'am. David has a clean credit history, stable income, but since marrying Sarah, he took out a $20,000 personal loan and another $20,000 last year. All that money just disappeared. My son was in debt because of her, swallowing debts he didn't even know she had. And the final blow. Mark took out screenshots of text messages. I managed to obtain conversations between Sarah and her sister Jessica, and between Sarah and a close friend. He read a few messages. Every word was a knife. Jessica, the old woman, won't let go of a single penny. But it doesn't matter. I found a way. I'm going to make her sign a deed of gift. I'll convince her she's losing her memory. David is a useful idiot. He does whatever I say. His mom has over $1 million in properties. If I can just get her to gift one, this boring marriage will be worth it. I'm not waiting for her to die. I have debts to pay now. I'm going to pressure her until she breaks. Tears were streaming down my face as Mark read. They weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage. How did you get these conversations? Mark smiled slightly. I have my methods, ma'am. The important thing is this is solid evidence of her intent. Is it legal to use this in a civil suit for fraud or coercion? Yes. It wasn't obtained through illegal wiretapping. Let's just say a source close to Sarah shared them with me. I didn't ask any more questions. I didn't want to know. I took all that information to Edgewood. We sat in his office and reviewed every document, every conversation, every piece of evidence. Linda, you have a solid case, he said. If Sarah tries anything, if she pressures you to sign, if she tries to have you declared incompetent, we have what we need to defend you. But more than that, we have what we need to countersue. What do you suggest? Edgewood leaned back in his chair.